Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. This is the Go Blue Tips for Surviving and Thriving at University of Michigan Mental Health Tips. My name is Laura Hayden. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the Community Outreach Intern at CAPS. Today, I am presenting with Ashley. Ashley, if you
Hi,
want to.
everyone. Yep. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Jacob. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the embedded counselor for Ellison and graduate students.
So, the goals for today are to provide suggestions on how students can prepare themselves to effectively transition to University of Michigan and to learn more about counseling and psychological services. This webinar is being recorded. The chat function has been disabled, but we would love to hear we'd love to answer your questions. So please submit them via Q&A feature, and we will have time at the end to discuss them.
All right. So this is the overview of what we're going to kind of be going over today. So we're going to talk about transitioning to college, some common stressors that first year students kind of experience, some tips and tools to maybe manage the adjustment and make it a little smoother. And then also we'll talk a little bit about CAPS, what we offer and what that'll kind of look like as well.
So the next few slides, we will get into specific transitions that you and students might be facing as they enter and adjust to the University of Michigan community. Keep in mind some things that you might be feeling nervous about as we move through the next couple of slides.
All right, so some first year transitions. So leaving home for college can be challenging and exciting for a lot of students. The first transition I think we wanted to cover and just kind of acknowledge is that this might be the first time that a lot of people are going to be in person in about a year and a half. Navigating a virtual format in the last year, navigating a pandemic, right? It might bring up some social anxiety or some nerves around like what it even means to be in person again. So that's something that I think a lot of people are going to kind of be struggling with or trying to learn how to navigate. Another thing that a lot of first year students struggle with or learn to kind of manage is they might be living on their own for the first time. So, this might involve leaving behind family, friends, your community, things that feel really familiar and safe. And depending on your experiences and your identities, you might have different ways on how you want to say goodbye or even how you want to keep in touch. And so thinking about, all of the different emotions that might be coming up, sadness, anxiety, also excitement, right? And thinking of like for you all, how you want to communicate that with yourself, but then also maybe your community as well. In line with that, there might be some homesickness. You might miss kind of the familiarity of home and your environment. I know when I was a first year, I really missed my bed the most. And so kind of learning how to create a new home base can be challenging, but also again, pretty exciting. And it's also might be a change in terms of routine, right? A lot of students are learning how to navigate and establish their own routine where you might have had the same schedule for years going to school in high school, middle school. And now is the first time that you might be able to choose a class that is at 11 instead of 8 a.m. And so learning like what kind of structure I want to set for myself. And then also with the food options. It might be the first time you're cooking on your own or figuring out how I want to meal prep or plan for my meals, which also can be a little stressful and new as well. I think the other thing a lot of students kind of mentioned talking about is learning how to, make new friends, getting along with roommates, figuring out how to connect with other people. For a lot of students, they might have known their classmates from kindergarten to senior year. And so now they're moving into a new campus where everyone, or I should say a lot of people might be new. And so there might be some anxiety or nerves about, how do I do that? And especially with moving in with a roommate, it might be one of the first times that you might be sharing this like an actual space with another person. And so kind of figuring out, okay, so how do I adjust and adapt to someone else's living habits? How do I communicate what my boundaries are? And then maybe how do I resolve conflicts if and when they come up? That's something else that isn't part of that adjustment period. And then another piece is learning to connect with people from diverse backgrounds, right? Again, thinking about you might have known people for a really long time, and now you're moving onto a campus where people are coming from all over the nation, even internationally, and bringing their own experiences, their own stories, their own cultures. And so it can be a little bit both difficult learning to find, how do I take up space? How do I kind of find shared values with people? And it can also be exciting, right? Like learning new things about people, learning new experiences. And so just kind of leaning into that sometimes can be pretty awesome.
When transitioning to college, there are some anticipated changes and common stressors that you might see come up. So, there is new environment and relationships. So, this could mean adapting to unfamiliar environments, adjusting to the living arrangements, as Ashley had discussed, or developing new relationships. There's living with roommates, which may be a major adjustment for individuals during their first year experience. Students face challenges of adjusting to roommates who may have different boundaries and individual needs than that of their family and friends from home. Roommates may or may not develop strong relationships or friendships, but regardless of that, communication and compromise can build a smoother transition. So, as Ashley said, it's important to kind of communicate and have those conversations with roommates as you transition into that period. So, college brings unique opportunities to interact and live with students from various backgrounds, as Ashley discussed. So, expanding your worldview by learning about each other's differences and similarities will likely enhance your college experience. There is anticipated changes in the personal freedoms that you have. So, there's greater personal freedom. In college, students may gain independence and take charge of decisions. This can be exciting, but it also may feel overwhelming and less predictable than what you're accustomed to. The freedom to manage your daily life is a learning process. So take your time with that and just give yourself some leniency as you're learning to do that. There's added responsibility and the need for time management. So, managing important daily responsibilities. There's managing basic tasks such as eating, sleeping, exercising, and going to class, which is something that was kind of managed for us before with our parents and with going to school. So, new students may also address more complex responsibilities, such as balancing studying and socializing, participating in clubs and activities, and handling finances. A typical day in college is less structured than in high school, and there is more reading and studying that is required outside of class time. So, that's something to consider as you are adjusting. So there's anticipated changes in academics, and that means coursework may be more challenging and difficult to keep up with. There's increased academic demands. There's pressure from yourself or maybe even your parents. There's the comparisons to others to do well. So that idea of like competition. There's pressure to select a career and know your career path immediately upon entering college. So those are some stressors that may come out of academics. And then, as mentioned before, there's changing relationships, family, friends, dating relationships, any of those. New students often face challenges, such as friends going to different universities, beginning new romantic relationships, or maintaining existing ones. There's also juggling the newly formed relationships with the already existing ones. Students must balance a sense of connectedness and separation while at college. So some first year students feel the need to maybe call or email several times a week, while others may feel that there's less frequent communication needed. Um, it's not uncommon for first year students to begin college in a long distance relationship, dating relationships. So, uncertainty in what the future holds for the relationship is one of the most common stressors experienced by college students in long distance dating relationships. It's just important to consider that verbal communication, openness, and assurance of one another can reduce stress associated with being separated. Um, it's also essential for each partner to seek social support from the others and remain active in their individual lives while apart as well. And lastly, as Ashley had mentioned, there is COVID-related changes and stressors that may come up over the last year. Many of you, or there's been many different changes that have happened. Those changes are still anticipated as we navigate the pandemic now and in the future. So we want to acknowledge that some of you are also coming from school after a year or two online. So transitioning back to in person may feel different or new. So it's just something to consider and keep in mind.
All right. So thinking about kind of reasons why students might reach out to CAPS or for some professional support. These are the top 5 reasons that students have self-identified as coming to CAPS in this last year. So symptoms of anxiety, kind of those like really worrying thoughts, maybe that like increased heart rate and tension, some depression, so that lower mood, maybe trouble concentrating, low motivation, emotional management. So kind of how do I cope with maybe all these different emotions that are coming up? How do I communicate that with other people in my support system? And then how do I kind of express them for myself? Stress is always kind of a big one as well. I think, we all have different forms of stress in different areas, whether that be school, work, relationships. And so learning how do I kind of hold my stress and how do I cope with that is that too. And then the fifth top reason is eating and body image. I think especially in this last year between the pandemic and just maybe spending more time on social media and kind of the changes in routine and kind of being at home and stuck inside your house, right, under quarantine and things like that. I think it really brought up a lot of awareness about maybe how we look, our appearances, and then that comparing ourselves to other people. Like I said, especially on social media where it feels like maybe that's what a lot of it is about. And so this is kind of the reasons why students have reached out in this past year. Now, with that being said, even though these are the top 5 reasons students have come to CAPS, it doesn't mean it's the end all be all. We kind of support students with a range of different concerns, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end when we go over CAPS.
There are many different feelings and emotions that students experience during their transition to college. So we're going to talk about some of those common feelings right now. There's excitement and anxiety, so being thrilled but somewhat fearful about being away from home or being in a new place. There's this pride of accomplishing, high school, attending university, the goal of obtaining a degree. There's a lot of like prideful feelings in that. There's embarrassment and shame. So maybe embarrassment of lacking knowledge as a new student, not knowing everything about campus or even knowing the campus culture. There's possible embarrassment of maybe even being first generation and not having the connections to college that other folks have. There's maybe the feelings of shame or being worried about finances. There's uncertainty. So being overwhelmed by all the college processes and learning and learning about campus, learning about classes, not knowing everything about campus again can lead to a lot of uncertainty.
So part of some of these transitions, we also wanted to just take a second and kind of acknowledge that there's sometimes stress related to our identities, right? And trying to, as we kind of talked about earlier, we're all coming with different stories, different cultures, perspective, worldviews, value systems, and communities, right? And so I'm kind of bringing myself, trying to be authentic, while also trying to build a community with people that I don't know or people that may be different from myself in a space that's inherently diverse, right? And so oftentimes that can be a little challenging and stressful in and of itself. When we think about identity related stress, that can range anywhere between our racial or ethnic identity, our sexual orientation, our SDS ability status, gender, religion, and even our academic ability or intelligence, right? It might be that I was the top 10% of my class, and now I'm coming into a space where 9 out of 10 students were in their top 10% of their class, right? And so navigating what that means and how I view my intelligence or how I view my abilities academically and some of the stress that might come with that. Similarly, we had talked about sort of the self-image, right? Our appearances or how we should act, whether that be through peer pressure, that, trying to acclimate to that sort of college experience while trying to connect with other people. And then again, that exposure to social media and seeing what it is that I should look like or how I should present myself in these different spaces. I think oftentimes that can also bring up anxiety or stress or concerns. And then also I think what Laura had said earlier about, being the first in your family to go to college, that being a first generation college student can be an identity and navigating maybe some of the nuances that other students might not struggle with, like financial aid, how do I schedule my classes, what are the resources on campus, that can sometimes bring up some stress as well. And so we just wanted to name this because, if you find yourself struggling with any of identity related stress, just knowing that you're not alone and that a lot of people experience or difficulty navigating this.
So, one tip to help with adjustment is to check in with yourself. During this time, it is important to check in with yourself and how you're doing. It can be helpful to spend some time reflecting on how you know when you're feeling stressed. So, if you notice that you're experiencing changes in concentration or motivation, sleep or eating, energy has either gone down or gone way up, maybe your mood has changed, or you have changes in the interest in activities and socializing, it may be time to reach out for some additional support.
So some other tips to just keep in mind, I think the biggest one, and this one can sometimes be the most frustrating, is just be patient with yourself. While campus may seem really new and overwhelming, it for a lot of new students, it does become familiar over time. You do learn kind of where the buildings are, what route can I take to get there the quickest, where's my favorite coffee shop, where do I want to study, just kind of some of those different things that you do learn with time. And I think also with that, just keeping in mind that you did an incredible job of getting here. You made it, you're in college, you're at U of M. And so really grounding yourself in that and reminding yourself that, of things that work for you and things that don't work for you, that might just need to be adjusted as you transition to college, whether that be your work schedule, your academic schedule, extracurricular activities, right? Whatever you do that kind of got you here, you have those skills. It's just maybe adjusting it a little bit. So just kind of being kind and patient with yourself. Another tip that can sometimes be helpful is connecting with other students and getting involved on campus. So joining a bunch of clubs and organizations, we have a lot on campus. I'm sure you all have heard some of them. And there's a list online with all of them. And so kind of figuring out what are your passions, what are your hobbies, what are your interests, and see if there's organizations or clubs that align with that. One, to kind of get familiar with campus, but then also to help connect with other people that share some of those interests. And then also kind of taking your time with it. You don't have to, day one of your semester one, jump into an organization. You can kind of feel it out, adjust it accordingly, and then join organizations as you feel comfortable. I think the other thing we always encourage students to do is to be the first to say hello. I know it's weird. It sometimes feel really awkward, I think, especially coming back from a pandemic. And it's kind of like, how do I engage with another human being in person? But again, knowing that a lot of people are adjusting with that as well and challenging yourself, right? If you see someone sitting next to you, introduce yourself, say hello, and start to build some of that connection. Because I think it goes along with that next bullet point we have of it'll help communicate your experiences, right? Sometimes it's helpful to talk about your concerns and your needs. One, just to be able to express it with someone else. And I think two, it'll kind of help normalize it because you'll start to learn, and students will start to learn that, you're not alone, that maybe a question that you might have or a question that another student has are very similar. And, we talk about, research shows that students reach out to non-professional support first. So thinking about how do I want to build my social network? How do I want to build sort of my foundation of support to kind of help me through as I adjust to college or move through the years of college. And then the other piece or the other tip that we have is just learning and utilizing the resources. There are a lot of resources here on campus, and it can be overwhelming as well as advantageous, right? And we also want to name that sometimes there might be some stigma or some barriers, whether that be kind of some like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do this. I've never gone to tutoring before, and now all of a sudden I feel like I need tutoring, right? There might be some uncomfortable thoughts or feelings that might come up for you, wherever that might come from. And it can also be helpful to just use the resources that are at your disposal, whether that be office hours, tutoring, academic support, or even some professional support as in CAPS. And sometimes it's helpful to talk to your GIs or GSIs and professors about like, hey, so what are some things that students struggle with in this class, right? Like, what should I anticipate? And that kind of gets you a heads up on like, okay, so I know that maybe this one assignment is something that students struggle with, but it might also help normalize it if and when I start to feel stressful about this particular assignment, for example. So just thinking about like, what are the resources on campus and how can I use them to my advantage to feel maybe more comfortable and more successful?
Some more tips when transitioning to college include adjust when needed. So try and be flexible. Give yourself room to change, grow, and adapt. Consider adjusting expectations. This is a big change that you're making, and being able to adjust expectations of yourself. Allow yourself time to adjust before holding yourself to the highest of standards. Taking time for adjusting is important to establish a sense of belonging and groundedness. So give yourself time as you're adjusting to a new diet, a new sleep schedule, a new exercise schedule. You're connecting with others in a new way, and you're living in new living situations. So those are important to consider. Don't force yourself to do something that you don't enjoy or that isn't what you expected. So if you are in a particular program or major and it's different than what you thought, or you're running into a lot of challenges with the content, it's okay to consider changing as needed. It's okay to find the best fit for you. There's no need to just pick a major and stick with it the whole way through if it's not going to be something that you enjoy doing. It's also important to consider adjusting your schedule as needed. So it's okay to change your schedule. You may need to change a class or even drop a class. So that's something to keep in mind. If it's not working for you, don't stick with it, or don't force yourself to do it to the point that it's causing you great stress. This may be that maybe you took an 8 a.m. course and now you're struggling to wake up in the morning. It may be beneficial to look at sections later in the day if you can switch, or if it's not something that's immediate or it's not something that can happen right away, keeping that in mind as you schedule in the future. So there is beware of FOMO, so fear of missing out. There's this feeling we get when we don't attend events, or sometimes it keeps us from saying no and taking care of our most immediate needs. So with that, it's okay to say no, and it's okay to set boundaries. Another suggestion is to alter ideas of success. This is a new chapter in your life, so success has completely different meaning. For example, consider changing what you think success or progress is. Focus more on hard work and what you learned over achievement or what grade you received. Be mindful of comparisons. It's important to notice when you are comparing yourself to others. This journey is your own and you're not any other person. So it's important to just kind of keep that in mind when you are navigating this entire experience. Practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is being warm and understanding ourselves as we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate. Rather than ignoring our pain or giving ourselves self-criticism, be kind to yourself, give yourself positive affirmations, give yourself the grace you give to others, and allow yourself to make mistakes and forgive yourself. Self-compassion involves acting in ways towards yourself as others when you are having a difficult time or notice something you don't like about yourself. So another tip is to practice self-care. Self-care doesn't have to be extravagant. Self-care is simply taking care of yourself. So getting adequate sleep, socializing, going out with friends or calling a loved one, being active. So going for a walk or seeing if there's any events on campus. And then the last thing is to think about what you're already doing. Pause and take a moment and imagine all the things, whether they're big or small, that got you here.
All right, so types of self-care. I feel like self-care is a word that shows up a lot, both within CAPS, but also I feel like on social media and things, right? And so taking a second, looking at these domains that we have here, feel free to write them down if you'd like, and I'll circle back to that in a second. So if we think about like, so what is self-care, right? Broadly speaking, it's just ways of maintaining your health and your wellness. So these are different domains that we think about in terms of our wellness and our health, right? We have physical, emotional, social, spiritual, um, and finding sort of our self-care in these different domains can help prevent burnout and also physical health concerns, right? We know our mind and our body are connected. And so if we're feeling really stressed or, we're having a lot of stressful thoughts, it might start to show up in our body where maybe we feel really tired all the time or we have a lot of tension in our shoulders, right? So thinking of if I can start to practice self-care, it might help maybe prevent or mitigate or, make it a little easier in terms of burnout. It also can help us learn to practice and create some work-life balance, right? Where I can maintain the work ethic that I feel really good about or works for me, and also take my breaks as needed so that my this sort of work life that I have feels a little more sustainable. And it can also help us enjoy kind of our activities. It can help strengthen our relationships with people because we're finding our boundaries, right, in that sort of social domain. Um, and it also can encourage basic healthy habits, right, like sleeping and eating and exercise. Um, and so the reason why I think sometimes it's helpful to write down these domains is to just pause for a second and think about, what am I already doing, right? Like, what is it that I'm already doing in these different domains that feels really helpful for me? And part of what can be helpful about reflecting on that is then I can kind of start to incorporate that in my routine before I even start classes, right? If I can sort of have that be like, if I like to go running, for example, maybe I know I like to go running in the morning. So I'd like to have morning runs, and then maybe I can schedule my classes accordingly, right? So thinking about like, what is it that I'm already doing and what is it that already works for me? And how can I start to incorporate that as I transition to college?
Now we're going to move into a section where we talk about some of the myths that prevent students from seeking professional mental health help. So it's important to know when to seek professional help versus community support. Um, we're going to talk about some of these myths. So the first one is that stress is normal, I don't need help. Well, stress is normal. There are levels of stress that are not healthy. If you are stressed for multiple days or feel stress is starting to impact impact other aspects of your life, such as that we talked about in the check in with yourself section, it may be time to reach out. So another myth is, I just need to tough it out, it'll get better. I think one thing to consider when we're in the university is uh, a lot of your um, some of your money that you're paying to go there goes towards services. So you shouldn't have to tough it out when there are many services available to you on campus for free that are there to help and support you. There's the idea that I'm too busy to schedule an appointment. So there's a variety of different options when it comes to reaching out. Some are less time consuming than others. And it's important to connect with different options to find out what works best for you and what fits in your schedule. What if other people find out? So there are a variety of confidential options at CAPS, such as CAPS, who are legally obligated to keep your information private. You can work with a CAPS counselor to find out ways to make you feel safe when trying to receive services. So one example that we've had during the pandemic is we use private rooms for students to access if they would like to have a room to themselves for private counseling. Or when they're doing virtual counseling services. So another myth that we have seen is, I don't feel like anyone will understand what I'm going through. So CAP staff are generalists and have knowledge working with a variety of issues and concerns. With that, CAP staff also offers a variety of groups as well. There are other services on campus that focus on different types of issues or specific types of issues as well. So it's just really important to check out what you have available to you.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about transitioning, some adjustments, and even some tips and tools. So another tool you have at your disposal is CAPS. So we're talking a little bit about CAP services and what we have to offer. So CAPS Central Office, we're located on the fourth floor of the Student Union, or excuse me, the Michigan Union. We also have embedded therapists throughout different schools on campus. So what that means is that they are CAPS staff, but they're specific to certain schools. For example, we have someone in dentistry, nursing, engineering. And so it just kind of might help streamline the process, but also might make travel and scheduling a little easier as well. For a full list of our embedded staff, we put up the website to take a look and see. So we also have our hours and our contact information posted up on the slide as well. So in general, CAPS, we offer free confidential services for students who are enrolled. Our services are brief and solution focused and can range anywhere between brief individual therapy, group therapy, and referrals to the community, which we'll kind of talk a little bit more about in a second.
So let's meet CAP's diverse staff. CAP staff includes social workers, psychologists, and trainees. CAP staff identify as generalists and are comfortable working with a variety of issues such as family and relationship distress, drug and alcohol concerns, adjustments and transitions to University of Michigan, anxiety, depression, as well as a whole lot more other topics as well. With that, as mentioned before, CAPS is confidential, highly utilized, and free for enrolled students.
So what is an initial consultation? We also call them ICs. So initial consultation is sort of that first step and that first meeting with the therapist at CAPS. It gives you a space to talk about maybe concerns that bring students in, things that have been going on, but also an opportunity just to get to know students better, so we have a better idea of maybe how we can better serve their needs. So with that, we work with students on collaboratively making a decision that will best kind of serve their needs, right? That'll best sort of meet where they're at. And as we mentioned before, that can be anywhere between brief solution focused therapy here at CAPS. Group therapy, we have either skills groups or interpersonal process groups. We also have case managers who can help maybe connect with other resources in the community or navigate tricky things like out-of-state insurance. We also can connect students with other U of M departments like SSD, SAPAC, to help kind of get them resources that might be helpful. And then we also offer referrals to community providers for more of that long-term, ongoing, consistent support. And like I said, all of that just kind of depends on what the student's needs are and how best we can meet those needs.
Another program we offer at CAPS is CAPS Peer Counseling Program. So if you're looking for support that is not professional mental health services, but still in the realm of talking about your needs, one resource that we have for students is the Peer Counseling Program. This is a one-on-one peer-led support program. They address common issues such as loneliness, adjustment and transition, learning about campus resources, managing stress, making friends, managing relationships, talking about roommates, things like that. I'd also like to note, while peer counseling is an amazing resource and students find it incredibly helpful, the peer counseling program is not a substitute for confidential therapy provided by a licensed mental health CAPS staff member.
All right. In addition to some of these awesome resources that we also have some other resources that students often utilize. So our Instagram page provides a lot of mental and emotional wellness tips and tools. We cover, a broad range of things like stress, anxiety, body image, nutrition, relationships, etc. And we also post kind of events that CAPS might be hosting, like some of our workshops and things like that for students to attend. The Stress Busters app is an app on your phone. It's continuously updated and it is very interactive. There's daily messages that are posted by the U of M community, including students, faculty, staff. There's also a thing called Break Pad, where it's literally just kind of a break from your day. It teaches you to pause, practice some of that mindfulness. So this app is widely utilized by students, but also staff and faculty as well. And then we have My Talk. So My Talk is on our website. It sort of just provides some information and education around a variety of topics, anywhere from time management and stress management, to how do I talk to my professor, to identity related stress, just a really broad array of concerns. And it kind of provides a little bit of a psychoeducation, but then also some tips and tools to how to manage, some of those concerns as well.
The last resource we're going to talk about today is SilverCloud. So SilverCloud is an online, self-guided, interactive mental health resource that provides cognitive behavioral therapy interventions. So the learning modules address anxiety, depression, body image, stress, and sleep. It helps manage day-to-day stresses and anxiety, improves resilience. It helps you learn skills to understand thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and helps reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. With all that being said, it's not designated to replace in-person mental health treatment, but it can be an effective option for students with mild to moderate symptoms.
All right. Thank you all for attending and for listening. We'd like to take this time to utilize or answer any questions, excuse me, and utilize the Q&A feature. So feel free to drop in any of your questions.
I can read the first question. So it says, what is the average wait time to see a social worker counselor at the university health system? And do you get to see the same counselor on a regular basis? So I'll let you answer the wait time question.
Okay.
I'll let you take over the whole question.
Okay, no worries. That's a great question. So in terms of wait time, it can vary. We typically like to see students as soon as possible, depending on the busyness of the semester. Sometimes that might take a little bit longer to make an initial consultation appointment. With that being said, we do have walk-in COD. It's our counselor on duty, which, excuse me, I did not mention during our CAPS overview. So we do have counselor on duty. I believe the time, they're walk-in appointments from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they are first come, first serve. And so students can drop in if they need kind of an immediate appointment. And then if you want to schedule an initial consultation, sometimes, like I said, those wait times can vary. In terms of who you meet, again, going back to kind of, it really depends on what your needs are. So if you are going to do some short-term work at CAPS, typically you will sort of meet with the counselor that you met with the first session, unless there's any sort of therapist preferences in terms of racial identity or specific concerns that another therapist might be able to help or serve you. I hope that answers that question.
All right, so the next question is, can CAPS refer you to UHS for mental health related things?
Refer to UHS, yes. So we do have a relationship with UHS, and we do kind of refer students if they need any additional mental health support, like medication management or things of that nature. We can facilitate that. We also can help answer certain questions about it if students have them. So short answer is yes.
That's the only two questions I've had so far. So I was just gonna give it some time in case any other questions came in. Think that might be it for questions then if you wanted to close. Oh, hold on. So what typically happens when students have insurance that doesn't provide in-network options in Ann Arbor?
Good question. So typically we'll refer to our case management if for whatever reason it's hard to manage or it's hard to find a therapist that provides you're looking for services in the community to use your insurance. We might consult our case management team to find some therapists that can work within that insurance, or if there's some way around it. We also can work with students on providing kind of services at CAPS if possible in terms of some of that short-term support. But we do try to facilitate kind of that warm transition and help support students with either getting them connected to the managed care office on campus or figuring out how to meet their need for long-term therapy with or without their insurance.
What do you find is the single biggest adjustment for incoming freshmen?
That's a really good question. Laura, do you want to take this one? I can also answer it as well.
I can't speak for all freshmen. I can speak for myself and what I had experienced. Full transparency, when I went to my undergrad, I was still about 20 minutes away from home. So I had the option to go home when I needed, which I know is not the case for everyone. So I would say I did see a lot of people struggle with missing their families, especially when they were out of state or potentially out of country. I know that was very hard for others. For me in particular, it was probably living with roommates. I had lived with my sister as a roommate before, so a lot more communication could happen, whether that was good communication or not, it could happen. So when I transitioned to moving in with roommates, it was just difficult to adjust to talking to somebody that I couldn't be a little bit more open with in ways that maybe I was with my sister. If I got frustrated, it was harder for me to deal with that. And I think as well, with the first week was just adjusting to the campus and how big it was. And I imagine it's pretty similar with U of M being a big campus as well. It's just, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of that is stuff that I've also heard students, for sure, students kind of talk about. Um, I think just the adjustment in and of itself can be really stressful, right? It's a lot of moving pieces at once between classes, meeting your roommates, a big campus, all the different departments, and just kind of, especially in the beginning, a lot of information. You're given a lot of information at once, and it's trying to navigate, okay, so like, how do I hold all of that? So I definitely think it's sort of just that adjustment in and of itself, where it's just all these moving pieces that I'm trying to navigate, I think can be really overwhelming, or yeah, for students.
All right, now I think we're done with questions.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you all for attending and all of your questions. If any other questions come up, let us know. And that, good luck. We wish you all the best. Welcome to Michigan, and go Blue.